South Africa has been shaken to its deepest foundations by a revelation that threatens to fundamentally reshape its political reality, as General Nathi, long regarded as a relentless and uncompromising seeker of justice, stepped forward with an explosive disclosure surrounding the mysterious death of former Arts and Culture Minister Nathi Mthethwa, who was discovered dead only weeks ago in a luxury hotel in Paris. What initially surfaced as quiet speculation and uneasy whispers of foul play has now erupted into a full-scale national scandal, igniting fear, anger, and disbelief across the country. For weeks, unanswered questions surrounded Mthethwa's sudden death. Early reports suggested a medical emergency, yet inconsistencies quickly began to surface, raising alarms among observers. Security footage from the hotel vanished under questionable circumstances. Hotel staff who had initially spoken openly to the media abruptly withdrew their statements, and French authorities maintained an unusual silence. Unknown to the public, General Nathi had been conducting a discreet parallel investigation, operating in the shadows while pressure mounted from unnamed but powerful political actors determined to obstruct his work. Those close to him described sleepless nights, covert briefings, and relentless interference designed to derail the pursuit of truth, yet his resolve never faltered despite the growing risks. Late last night, Nathi summoned journalists to a tightly secured government facility in Pretoria, where tension filled the room as cameras flashed and recording devices captured every word. The weight of anticipation was unmistakable as he began his address with calm precision, announcing that investigators had identified those responsible for Nathi Mthethwa's death. He stated that the evidence directly linked the perpetrators to entrenched political and financial power structures that had operated in secrecy within the nation for far too long. Emphasizing that the findings extended far beyond the death of a single individual, he looked directly into the cameras and declared that South Africans deserved the truth, even if it shook the country to its core. The press conference stretched on for nearly 2 hours, but its impact reverberated instantly, not only across South Africa but far beyond its borders. Nathi confirmed that 2 South African operatives traveling on diplomatic passports were captured entering Mthethwa's hotel suite shortly before midnight on the night of his death and exiting through a restricted service corridor just 14 minutes later. Hotel logs showed no official record of their presence, and according to sources, French police were allegedly instructed by unnamed South African officials to keep their distance from the investigation. Within minutes of these revelations, panic reportedly surged through the highest levels of the African National Congress. At Luthuli House in Johannesburg, senior party officials were said to be locked in emergency meetings as chaos and fear gripped the leadership. Insiders described President Ramaphosa pacing corridors as uncertainty rippled through the party's upper ranks, while security protocols at the union buildings were abruptly heightened. Communications teams were ordered to closely monitor all media activity, and officials scrambled to prepare a response. Even more troubling were reports that several long-standing ANC figures, including individuals known to have worked closely with Mthethwa, abruptly withdrew from public view or went into hiding following Nathi's disclosures. In one of the most damaging segments of his statement, the general revealed that investigators had traced multiple electronic transfers between a state-linked business account in Johannesburg and a foreign account in Luxembourg. These transactions, executed just 2 days before Mthethwa's death, were allegedly used to finance the travel of one of the operatives. Each transfer was deceptively labeled as cultural cooperation expenses, suggesting deliberate efforts to disguise illicit activity. The investigative team also recovered deleted CCTV footage from backup servers at the Paris hotel, including a critical 37-second clip that allegedly shows one of the suspects placing a small vial into Mthethwa's drink moments before leaving the room. Declaring that investigators possessed both the footage and corroborating witnesses, Nathi stated that attempts to erase evidence had failed. His words hung heavily in the room, offering chilling confirmation of a crime many had suspected but could not previously substantiate. An ANC spokesperson quickly rejected the allegations, dismissing them as reckless, unfounded, and politically motivated, accusing Nathi of inflaming division and conspiracy. Yet behind closed doors, even loyal party members reportedly expressed fear and confusion, privately acknowledging that this was no longer rumor or speculation. According to one senior figure, the party was panicking because many knew how close Dua had been to sensitive information and what he might have been preparing to expose. Political analysts suggested that Dua may have been on the verge of releasing highly sensitive documents involving state tenders, covert construction contracts, and political payoffs that could have implicated high-ranking government officials. If accurate, this would suggest that his death was not accidental but a calculated attempt to silence him. As news of Nathi Mthethwa's statement spread, social media erupted into a digital inferno, with hashtags demanding justice and accountability trending for hours as citizens called for answers. Protesters gathered outside ANC headquarters carrying banners demanding truth and an end to deception, while civil rights organizations called for an independent international inquiry. Opposition parties intensified pressure on President Ramaphosa, demanding that he step aside pending a comprehensive investigation. Before leaving the podium, Nathi Mthethwa delivered a stark warning, stating that he understood the risks of speaking out but refused to remain silent. He described Dua as a friend, a patriot, and a man who knew too much, asserting that those who silenced him would attempt to silence others as well, but that the truth would prevail. With that, he exited without taking questions, leaving journalists stunned. If the evidence withstands scrutiny, experts believe the scandal could become the largest political crisis in South Africa's history. Legal analysts predict potential mass resignations, arrests, and serious international consequences, particularly if French authorities reopen the case based on Nathi Mthethwa's findings. Reports indicate that the French government has requested an official briefing, while diplomatic sources suggest that Interpol may soon be drawn into the investigation. Domestically, public confidence in the ANC is deteriorating rapidly, with opinion polls reflecting a steep decline in trust. Opposition leaders have framed the situation as the beginning of the end for the ruling party, arguing that the revelations have opened a Pandora's box that can no longer be closed. Questions surrounding accountability, integrity, and the depth of political corruption now dominate national discourse, amplifying the sense of crisis. South Africans, already exhausted by years of corruption scandals, economic instability, and political infighting, are now confronting the unsettling possibility that the death of a prominent leader was not a tragedy of circumstance but a deliberate act of elimination. Images of operatives entering Dua's hotel suite, combined with recovered surveillance footage and trace financial transactions, paint a disturbing picture of a political system willing to sacrifice its own to protect secrecy and power. Analysts warn that the broader implications extend far beyond a single death, suggesting that further evidence could expose a vast network of political and financial actors operating beyond accountability. The prospect of international scrutiny only heightens the stakes, potentially affecting diplomatic relations, investor confidence, and perceptions of governance across the globe. Within the ANC, fear and uncertainty now dominate internal discussions, as senior officials question who may be implicated next and focus increasingly on damage control rather than leadership. Nathi Mthethwa's announcement has destabilized the party, forcing its leaders to confront realities many had long avoided. Once secure corridors of power now echo with suspicion and vulnerability. Public reaction has been fierce, with civil society groups and protesters demanding transparency and impartial justice rather than empty explanations. Social media continues to amplify this unrest, reflecting widespread frustration with entrenched power structures and perceived impunity among elites. At the heart of the crisis lies a fundamental question regarding the true extent of corruption. The evidence presented suggests systemic abuse of state resources, manipulation of diplomatic privileges, and the silencing of individuals who threatened entrenched interests, striking at the very core of democratic accountability. For President Ramaphosa, the stakes could not be higher, as his response to this crisis will shape both his legacy and the future of the ANC. Observers argue that decisive action, cooperation with international authorities, and transparent investigations may help limit long-term damage, while hesitation or denial risks further erosion of trust and accusations of complicity. International attention is intensifying, with global media framing the revelations as a dramatic escalation in a country already grappling with political instability. Diplomatic inquiries are reportedly multiplying, and financial markets are closely monitoring developments amid concerns over leadership uncertainty. As dawn breaks over Pretoria, South Africa stands at a critical crossroads, with one question hanging heavily over every institution and household: who else will fall before the full truth emerges? The scandal has exposed the fragility of political systems and the dangers of unchecked power, serving as a stark reminder that democracy depends on vigilance, transparency, and accountability. Whether this moment leads to genuine reform, sweeping justice, or deeper turmoil remains uncertain, but one reality is undeniable: the truth has begun to surface, and the era of operating in the shadows is coming to an end.